We're
Perfect.
live.
We are live.
All right.
So, I'd like to welcome everyone to this exciting interview with our special guest, Danielle Demchak, today. Really excited to have her.
Yes.
Erica, if you wanted to.
Sure. Take it away. Cool. So we have Danielle here. Danielle is a certified relationship and couples coach. She helps couples that are consistently triggering each other to be able to stop and course correct and move towards a more healthy, loving, respectful, connected relationship. Danielle works with couples who are on the brink of divorce, and she helps them to save their relationship. She coaches couples on how to communicate, if I can spit it out, communicate more effectively. She helps them to heal their past wounds, to love better, and to establish more healthy relational dynamics that help to draw couples closer together and grow deeper in love. She helps them to heal. We have a little bit of an echo here, guys. Uh-oh. Are we live still?
Yep, still
okay.
live.
Okay. All right. Technical difficulty here. All right. So she helps couples to establish healthier relational dynamics and helps them to draw closer to each other and grow deeper in love. So that is Danielle. That's what she does. Did I miss anything, or is there anything you would like to add?
No, that sounds like a great start. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you, and I'm just really grateful to be able to do this interview with you.
Yes.
So thank you.
Excited to have you.
Yes. All right.
Cool. Well, I guess let's start kind of with your story. So how did you end up on this journey into relationship coaching? What inspired you?
Yeah, I often avoid this question because it's it's actually like a bittersweet for me. I think that a lot of people, at least that I've come across, well, you know, it's just like in any field, right? You study it because you're passionate about it, and you study it because your history kind of dictated a lot of why you chose that. Whether it's becoming a detective because something went tragically wrong as a child, or you just really, you know, forensic science or whatever it is that you study. So for me, I think that the biggest wounding in my life has been around relationships. So very young, I grew up in a very, I would say quite dysfunctional family, a middle class, blue collar, which is nothing wrong with that. And from the outside, everybody thought it was a great family. I mean, I came from a pretty small community, so everybody kind of knew everybody. If something went tragically wrong in one's family, you would know about it. It wasn't a huge city, but it had a small town kind of vibe. Wow. And so, you know, that's really, at the time, I didn't know it as a kid, how dysfunctional it is. You don't really realize that until you get out of your family and you realize, what was that? That's not. And as you start becoming an adolescent, you started to notice the things that your friends' families did or how they behaved was very different, right? Yeah. So, you know, there was a lot of unhealed trauma in my family, alcoholism, abuse. This is the first time I'm actually publicly saying that because my family probably wouldn't be so comfortable with me saying that, nor would they even really probably admit to that actually being the case. And, you know, coming from two narcissistic parents, there was also quite a bit of gaslighting. So making it believe that something was something when it wasn't, right? And so then being able as a child to be trusting of your own experience that was it, right? Or not. And this isn't to say, oh, woe is me. It's just to say that's coming from that and then going into my adulthood and continuing with the things that I learned. You know, there was a lot of yelling growing up. That was the communication style, right? So there's a lot of yelling. There was a lot of blaming in coming from two narcissistic parents, not technically diagnosed, but because that has a spectrum as well, right? That there was a lot of blaming, right? So I got very used to being yelling and blaming and having big emotions and not knowing how to communicate that in a very effective way. And that's just what I learned from growing up and being able to just suck it up and not have any repair, right? but then go back when things settled, like nothing happened. And I'm sure people can relate. Like a lot of families do that. It's just like they have these blowouts, and then, you know, the ashes settle and you just go back. But all along, all that does is build up years and years of resentment. And until there's proper repair, it just lives with resentment and not knowing how to repair. And so we take that, and I took that into my relationships, not knowing, and also, you know, a lot of shame that came out of growing up in this environment, right? So working through that. And as an adult, I finally realized that I was having unsuccessful relationships. And what I mean, I would have some good relationships that were long-term, but like, I didn't have the skills to be able to really grow in love and move past what I call the second stage of relationship, which is when we start to trigger each other and we act out these behaviors that then it trigger our partners, and we become in this loop of continuous triggering. Yeah. So I could never move past that stage. And so then, you know, I think that recognizing that was the first step. I always say awareness is the first step. Like, okay, this isn't working. I have some part in this. I never learned that, because when you're constantly being blamed in that kind of family dynamic, it's really hard to take ownership, because you're constantly being blamed, right? So
constantly on the defensive.
Yeah.
Constantly on the defensive. So I had to learn first through awareness that these patterns are not serving me anymore. This is not serving me. This isn't who I am, and this isn't the direction I want to go with my life. And I also had healthier relationships, but I was like, I want to know what the really healthy people are doing. I want to know how they're actually flourishing in love and how they're just growing. Now, I did at 15 move out and moved in with my grandparents, and they were very much in love. So I did have a healthy version somewhat of what a healthy relationship can look like. And that's when my nervous system be able to settle a little bit. And I was able to be more at ease. I was able to really experience love, not feel like I was under attack. But that was only a brief time before I went on to college, right? So I got a little taste of it. So, and my grandmother very much listened to me. She took the time to understand. She, you know, so I did have that. So I did have a little glimpse of that, but I don't think it was enough.
Right.
And so that's really when I was able to, I say it's my dog that really taught me love. So when I got my dog, I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. This is actually what love feels like. Wow. To be able to just embody that and start to, and my therapist at the time was like, yes, this is exactly what love feels like. And the relationship that I started to develop with my dog was really healthy. It was securely attached, you know, and so we basically, that's the attachment system, talking about basically, in case people out there don't know what attachment theory is, it's basically how we develop our nervous system off of our primary caregivers, whether it's our mother, our father, or grandparent. So they did many studies where the children would actually, the ones that were securely attached, the mother would leave the room, the child would be okay, the mother would return, and the child would come back to the mother or the father in this case, you know, whatever the primary caregiver is. So that's what my dog was doing. She would, you know, she was fine when I'd leave. And then when I'd come back, she'd come running to me. So you can learn so much by your animals.
Right.
Now, that's only a small aspect, but a huge impactful aspect of my journey. You know, I've also went on to study a ton with like some of the best of the best around relationships, around couples coaching. And have a background in positive psychology, which is all about human flourishing. So that's kind of the long story to why, and now having reaped the benefits of knowing and actually being skillful at relationship, being able to have better relational skills, all of my relationships have gotten better. And I make conscious efforts of why I do what I do. So I'm more at the helm of my relationship and not at the whim of my relationship.
Oh, love
I
it.
think that's a really key distinction for
Yeah.
people to note, is like, that's a possibility, rather than, you know, feeling that the relationship's just beating you around like rough seas, that you can actually take control and move the thing where you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say, you know, it's really about having two willing participants. Because without somebody else being able and willing to be in it with you, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a romantic relationship, you have to have somebody who's willing to be in it with you.
100%. Yeah. And I think what really resonated with me, and something that I really appreciate in what you do, is that you kind of work with couples that are in that second stage of relationships where, you know, they're out of, you know, limerence, they're out of the honeymoon stage, and now they're triggering each other. And from, you know, from what we see, that's where the majority of relationships end, because they're like, wait a second, this person isn't who I thought that they were. You know, this relationship is garbage, and then they trash it. And in my opinion, they give it away too soon, you know. And that's where you really need somebody that honestly has lived through that, to be able to kind of guide you through that stage, because that stage is not easy to get through when you're both, you know, triggering each other. A lot of it is just unconscious patterns and programming that's at play. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to have somebody to guide you through that, to get to the healthy relationship and that deep connection that I think all of us are just really, really thriving to achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, you know, for me, and specifically, you know, when I would get to that phase of a relationship, it would be very intense for me, and I didn't know how to regulate myself. It would just be really so intense. I didn't have what we call the tolerance, the inner tolerance, to be able to handle the uncomfortability of that, and the emotions just kind of flooded me. And so it would be my options, which I think a lot of people can relate to, is that we feel that we need to run, right? Out of survival, right? Out of self-preservation, out of self-protection, that we need to run. And so that was my pattern. I'd run before I'd be able to actually, because I thought that was the only way that I could be safe. And now it's learning, you know, it's being able, how do we, because the brain wants to, and our biology wants to connect and protect, right? So we're constantly wanting to be able to connect. That's in our DNA. We're relational beings. And yet if we are in a state where it's unsafe or we don't trust, we will want to protect. That's why safety and trust in a relationship, in the foundation, and knowing how to set that up is essential, because if not, it will be a constant threat state, and it will be very hard for that couple to connect. Yeah. It will work against the biology.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'm kind of curious to ask you, you know, we're talking a lot about connection and connecting deeply, and that seems to be a little bit of kind of like a buzzword in the coaching industry, as you want to connect deeper, connect deeply to your partner. What, in your opinion, how would you define deep connection? What does that deep connection in relationship mean to you?
And actually, it's funny because you're right. It is kind of this buzzword, like deep connection, but nobody really breaks down, well, that, yeah, we all want that, but what does that mean? Right. It's a good point. I never really thought about it in that way. Yeah, because sometimes when we even, I'm curious, you know, I wish I could interact with the audience, but I'm curious as to how, like, when you think of that word deep connection, do you shrink or do you expand? Because it can be scary, because what does that mean to connect so deeply? What does that mean, like, is required of me? Yeah. Yeah. What does that, you know, and so a lot of people could feel their bodies starting to back off versus lean in.
Yeah.
right?
You know, and the interesting thing about that too, and we talked, you know, kind of briefly about attachment theory, and somebody that is more of the avoidant attachment, I can imagine, you know, they hear the words deep connection or connecting deep with your partner, and they're like, oh, hell no, that's too much. Can't do it. Don't know how to do it. Don't want to do it. I'm done. And, you know, I think that happens a lot in relationships too, that you've got your anxious and they're like, come to me and be with me and love me. And I promise I'm enough. Let me be enough for you. Let me connect deeply with you. And then the avoidant is like, absolutely not. Nope.
What's this? Too much.
Yeah, and you know, it's I'm in this training right now with Dr. Stan Tacton, who's one of the amazing influential psychologists and researchers around you know, and really talks about a lot about attachment theory. And one of the things that he calls the avoidant is the islands, right? They're really good at self-soothing. Because that's what they learned as a child and a baby, right? That there was a lot of neglect and in the family system with the child. And so the child learned really like that it had to self-soothe. So often you'll see avoidant behaviors maybe going off when they get anxiety, right? Going off and being on their phone or in a video game or something that feels like a self-soothing. Harder for them to stay connected.
Right. Yeah.
Where the anxious wants to, like, you know, grab on, hold on for dear life, around, and really fearful in anticipation of what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So really the deep connection comes from being able to go from this what I call the perfect storm, where we start triggering each other and acting out behaviors because of our original wounds. We always pick the perfect partners to activate those original wounds in hopes that it's going to be different. Again, you know, that is subconscious. It's hoping it's going to be different. And maybe this time it's going to be different. The thing is unless we have the skills on how it's going to be different and the tools on how we're going to make that different, the opportunity gets lost because it becomes so painful that we have to get out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is once we start to move through with the proper tools and grow deeper in love, that is about being what we call differentiation. That's the work of Dr. Ellen Bader and her husband, oh my God, Peterson. Oh my God, I forgot his first name. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, Peter. Oh my gosh.
We'll have to
anyway, the Couples Institute, we'll put it under the Couples Institute, and really being able to get to the point in your relationship where you can be able to self-soothe yourself enough and be able to speak your truths, your beliefs, your opinions, your thoughts without having to agree or disagree with your partner. You can disagree.
Yeah.
And that they can do the same. Because that's where the intimacy, it's going to be a safe for you to come to your partner about anything, because you know that they're going to be able to sit there, get curious about your reality, about your perspective and your life views without taking it personally. That's where the deep connection can grow. That's what we're talking about when we are saying growing more in love. And that requires being able to learn the skills to be able to self-regulate enough. And also Dr. Stan Tacton talks about a lot of being able to co-regulate, where you're actually noticing your partner starting to get anxious, but that takes time. And then you're able to do something to help to settle him or her. Right.
It's definitely a practice for sure.
Oh yeah. It takes a lot. It's a practice for sure. It takes a lot of knowledge to get to that point, you know, because the last thing that you want to do is realize, oh, my partner is dysregulated. And then if you don't know how to effectively bring that to their attention, you're going to end up going to them and saying, you know what, you're dysregulated. And that is going to piss them off even more. It's going to be a downward spiral.
Exactly. Yes. Do not do this at home unless you have a coach or a therapist that knows how to take the couple through this. I'm just we can, the first part, I would say, to the deeper connection with your partner is to be able to first just have a speaker and a listener. That is the most basic form of what we're talking about. And the speaker speaks, but the listener listens, and then you switch it. And there's ways to do it, but that's the most basic way to start out. And then, starting to meditate, on your own, because what that will help do is, as Emily Fletcher with Ziva meditation, that is one of the practices that I still integrate daily. She'll say that what it does is it cleans up the nervous system, right? It cleans up our old anxieties and our traumas, and it really helps us to down regulate, to bring our nervous system down. And so that can actually help us and changes the brain to be able to start to down regulate more. And that you can bring into your relationship. It's not going to solve the relational dynamics, but it is going to help you to self-regulate a little bit more. For these intense moments. And then sometimes people will say, yeah, but we had this huge fight. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's like going to the gym and you're using a new tool and you're starting to lift the 5-pound weights. And then you go in the gym the next day and you're lifting 100 pounds. Like these are all practices. So don't expect those huge arguments to be to use these tools right away. Start with something like what I say is there's a green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. The red zone's like, the frontal cortex. Everything's gone off the rails, right? Try this more in like the lower yellow zone, where you start to feel your armpits sweating, your heartbeat racing. That's probably a better zone, not something that's too heavy for you to lift yet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I hope this is making sense. If you need any clarity along the way.
To me.
Right. So I guess I'm curious, we're talking a lot about nervous system regulation and all of that. So do you have any like tips or strategies with regards to what somebody can do when they are in those situations? Let's say maybe they are in like a yellow zone where they're noticing they're getting dysregulated, and what is something that they can do to kind of re-regulate their nervous system in those instances?
Well, that's great, because I was going to add something to the question and I forgot. But it applies to this question too. Good. So it's being able to, and the way that you can also do that, this is a simple way that we use in positive psychology, is being able to see things from many different perspectives. So Brian, I sent you Duck Bunny. Can you just shoot the Duck Bunny up?
Absolutely. Let me just share screen. I'm going to go.
Use this as a coffee break.
Yes.
Where did this go?
There
it is.
Got it.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Problem.
Okay. So we see here, and this is one simple way. So what do you see, Erica, first glance?
First glance?
Yes.
I see a duck, first glance.
Great. What do you see, Brian?
I also see the duck.
All right. So you guys both see a duck. Now, can you see the bunny?
I cannot see the bunny.
Beautiful, Erica. Thank you for your honesty. Okay, so the bunny's eye is right where the duck's eye is. And
I see it now. I see it. As soon as you said the bunny's eye, I was like, oh, easy. I got it.
Right. And this is what we want to do in our relationships. And some of my couples will be like, when there's a situation that they're totally at odds with, they'll be like, is this a duck bunny? Because this is exactly what happens between couples, is that when there's an obstacle, one person sees it as a duck and the other one sees it as a bunny, but they both exist.
Yeah.
It's just a different perspective. And so how do we start to acknowledge our partner in their perspective without taking it personally and without having to agree? You don't have to agree at all.
Right.
But you can say, oh yeah, you're right. I can see that from your perspective.
Yeah.
Because it does, yeah, from your perspective, that does look like a bunny.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I like to use this. I also like to use, thanks, Brian. I like to use my cup, because when I'm sitting here on the phone with you, what do you see?
You said your cup?
Right now, a blank cup.
Oh, yeah.
A white cup, right? But if I turn it around, what do you see?
Lipstick.
Right? You don't see a white cup anymore. You see a white cup with lipstick.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what happens, is depending on where we stand, we see something different. So the partner standing from this side sees the white cup. The partner standing from this side sees the white cup and lipstick. So it's not about my job to convince you that my cup is only white, or my cup has pink lipstick and white.
Yeah.
But it is our job in relationship to say, hey, this is how I see it. Hey, this is how I see it.
Yeah.
And there's truth to both.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's where I do often encourage people how to connect deeper, is being able to see it, duck bunny, in every situation. Again, I say every, but the moment we get triggered, which we'll go over in a minute, our critical thinking goes offline and we forget, which is normal. And that's why they're practices. But the other thing that I want to talk about the 3 powerful strategies to connecting deeper, is leading the conversation with trying to understand. That's where that duck bunny also comes in. Trying to understand versus being understood. So how many times do you start the conversation when incidents happen, like, hey, I want to hear what happened for you. What just went down there for you?
Yeah. I mean,
Fairly regular for us,
Right.
but not regular.
Not regular for most people at all, because I think that with the majority of couples that we work with, it's a matter of, hey, let me tell you what's going on for me. I'm going to share my perspective, and you're going to just get with it, basically. Yeah. And most of us weren't taught this at home. I mean, I think what we're trying to do when we come into couples coaching or relationship coaching is we're trying to be, so there's 3 to 10% of the population that actually learned how to go in their home, learned how to go from like yelling to then being able to say, hey, wait a minute, let me listen to this, let me hear. So we're asking 90% of the population to do something they were never taught to do, which we're trying to ask them and ourselves to go from being normal to extraordinary in relationship. And so I think giving yourself just like and when I say yourself, I'm the people that, we're talking with, just being able to give yourself a break to know this isn't something that most of us learned. Right.
Yeah, it's a great place to find a little grace for ourselves as we're going through.
Yeah. And so, and also like, wow, a pat on your back. Like, I'm trying to do something extraordinary.
Yeah.
In this moment that, and I like the example of yelling because I kind of laugh because when have I ever experienced as a kid, your parents yelling and then being like, wait a minute, I really want to hear your perspective on this.
Right.
What's going on for you? Now, there are parents that do that, but not the majority according to the statistics.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
The other thing that is a powerful strategy to connecting deeper is again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, is the listening and speaking role. So early on in my coaching, I don't introduce the more advanced version of this. I start with a very simple, like the ones that just can't, like, are back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like straight up, I don't allow that in my sessions.
Right.
I'm like, we have to come in. So a lot of times I'll do a little individual to prep them to what to expect and how, you know, it's kind of inviting them to see a way of showing up differently.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, I'll just be like, we're going to just have one speaker and one listener, just so they can get used to that back and forth, not that back and forth, but somebody actually listening and what's coming up for the listener, but also what's coming up for the speaker, and getting them used to being able to really start to, in real time, hear what the other person is saying. And at the same time, it's very hands-on in the beginning, being able to stop, pause. Okay, what's happening over here? Because they'll fall back into old habits of blaming. When they hear something that triggers, it's automatically going to take the frontal cortex off, and all of a sudden we just have a state of survival mode kick in.
Funny, I'm triggered by you talking about this being triggered.
What part of it, Brian?
I'm curious about that as well.
The general, because that's what I do. Totally cool. Something said, and frontal lobe shut down, and we're coming reptilian, baby.
I mean, you and 100% of humankind.
Yeah.
100% of humankind. I appreciate you being so honest and vulnerable about that, because, and also you're so aware, right, of your triggers. And that's what I'll also talk. A lot of couples too don't even know their individual triggers. So I have to like help them to even recognize, well, let's explore what your triggers are. What is it that makes you go 0 to 100? Do you know what that is? And then does your partner know that? Because it's just as important for your partner to know that, so she or he has the manual to your triggers, so that they can be more that they can be more sensitive to those triggers. Because that's our job too, is to also be kind to our partner's sensitivities. These are deep wounds. These are not just, because we wouldn't go 0 to 100. In 12-step, they say if it's hysterical, it's historical. Right? It's something that is, you know, all of a sudden the brain has scanned for threat through its 5 senses. Oh my God, alert, 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 and everything goes offline. That's where meditation is also helpful, is that we can start to pause before, you know, the reaction. It creates a pause between cause and effect. We don't jump to effect as quickly over time, right? The other thing, again, with the brain and talking about the brain, is always important when connecting deeper, that we are able to get relief before repair. A lot of times we want to jump to solution without getting the relief. So the nervous system, so I always do the example like of the brain. So your brain is basically a brain within a brain. So here's the critical thinking, this is your frontal cortex, and here is your reptilian brain, as you called it, Brian, the amygdala. And so all of a sudden something happens, and it's like a big trigger, and this happens. So the only thing being able to respond is the threat response. It's scanning through its 5 senses, because it remembers painful experiences, and it wants to prevent us from those painful experiences. Because most people, if you were to ask them what's effective behaviors in relationship, they can write them out.
Right.
But why can't they do them? This is why they can't do them.
Right.
Because they're trying, and what in coaching we're helping them do is being able to have that dance between, how can I stay connected, notice my nervous system, down-regulate, and also protect myself. Before, and so one of the ways to get relief before repair is a safe word. So I tell my couples, have a safe word. When you hit up against that trigger, have a safe word. Like, ouch. I always like ouch because it's very effective for me, because everybody knows what ouch means.
Yeah.
Any language, actually, I think, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. I
think so.
Big assumption.
Right.
Sounds true.
It's right.
So it's like, ouch, right? And then at that moment, the partner can go ahead and just say, okay, let's stop and replay. Let's stop and replay. And I'm just running through this exercise so you can get so that the audience can get a glimpse of what's possible.
Yeah.
And then you stop and replay. What is it that you're needing to hear? Because you want to take this reaction and start to have it. And this is how you can do this with your partner, is being like, what did you need to hear in that moment? Now, everybody's going to want to argue out of defensiveness is, oh yeah, but that's not how I really feel. It doesn't matter. Is your relationship more important, or is it, that's not the way you really feel? It's not about you. Right. It's about something triggered your partner, and you want to be and have their back. You want to help them get out of pain because they're in pain. And if you don't help them get out of pain, they're going to get these other behaviors that are ineffective is going to start to kick in. So the first thing is get them out of pain.
Yeah.
So say, for instance, it would be, what did you need to hear in that moment? Right? Honey, what did you need to hear in that moment? I needed to hear this. Repeat them back to them. Ask them for further clarification. What else did you need to hear? And then thank them. It's super simple and super effective because it just gets that part and that pain need met so that they can settle back down. Then you can start to repair.
Right.
But not until then. Get out of pain first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that you're kind of touching, there's a few things that you said that I'm really happy that you touched on. The first being is how important it is that you're both present and willing to work on things, because how often do we see, let's say we incorporate the safe word and, ouch or red or whatever it may be. Yeah. And the other person is like, oh no, you're not getting out of this. We talk a lot about taking a time out. As soon as you notice that you're dysregulated, call a timeout, because again, you don't have access to critical thinking. You're not going to be able, you can read every book, you can be taught every strategy, you can know everything. When we're triggered, that goes out the window. We don't have access to it. And if you have a partner that's not willing to give you the space and help you to re-regulate your nervous system, that's where things start spiraling all over again. And then the other thing I really appreciated that you said was keeping in mind that your partner's in pain. This is where you get that compassion for your partner, in that, okay, they're getting a little loud, they seem to be really dysregulated, they must be in pain. And that will, I think that, at least for me, that's something that I was taught a while back, is thinking of it as like, wow, he's really in pain. And then you come at it from a much softer place.
That's beautifully said, Erica. Absolutely. You do. When you realize it's not about you, and because it's so easy to take it personally, right? And that's really the growing in love, is that we stop taking our partner's actions personally. It's often that they're acting out of their own pain. And that's beautifully said. And it softens when we can see them. Sometimes I say to certain clients, I said, think of it as like a 6-year-old little girl or a 6-year-old little boy. How would you treat them?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully if they're good parents,
yeah.
Tenderly.
Yeah.
Tenderly. And it doesn't mean that at a certain point, once you help your partner to get out of pain, it doesn't mean later on you can't say, I just now, I noticed like I was getting activated because the way you were behaving was really upsetting to me and scary to me. It doesn't mean that you can't say that. the yelling really activated me because I came from a home that often yelled. And so it puts me in a state of freezing or whatever it is. It's not to say that you can't have that conversation, but in the moment of the intensity, it's like, what do you need to hear? Right. What is it that you want to say? And a lot of people often say, yeah, but that feels so fake and structured. Well, yeah, there's what you're doing isn't working. And I say that with all kindness and compassion. Yeah. And it's going to feel fake because it's also like when you change your mindset, like I'm thinking financial mindset, and you have a different set point, it's not going to feel real. It's going to feel fake and like you're trying to be something you're not. Mm-hmm. Well, you haven't been there. So of course it's going to feel fake. It's not going to feel familiar because it's not familiar. But familiar doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I say that a lot to couples, particularly the couples that we work with that are having some trouble in the bedroom and they're not having as much sex as they want to be having. And we tell them straight up, put it in the calendar, like schedule it out. And a lot of people, when you say that to them, they're like, no, it sounds fake. I shouldn't have to schedule sex. And, it should just come naturally. And they're so opposed to it. And it's like, what you're doing now isn't working clearly. So how is this going to hurt you? It's not going to hurt the situation any. And the majority of people, once you start having sex, generally you're enjoying it. So worst case scenario, so, but it is interesting how opposed people can be to incorporating something new into their routine. But, the thing is, once you incorporate it and you start, doing it more consistently, before you know it, it's a routine. The same with the sex. Before you know it, you don't even need to put it in the calendar. Before you know it, you're having sex, twice a week and you're not even thinking twice about it. It starts building on itself.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing is you have to force change. So of course it feels forced. Yeah. It's a natural progression of making change.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll grow into that feeling familiar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That will become familiar.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of growth.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
Absolutely. Cool. So what have you seen are kind of the most common barriers to deep connection that you see in couples?
Yeah, a lot of it is going to come down to the 4 horsemen of the Gottman Institute, right? Which is criticism, where we actually attack our partner's character, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then there's contempt, which could be like scoffing or eye rolling at the same time.
Oh, I totally got busted doing that earlier.
You did.
So it's often coming from a place of like moral superiority, like,
yeah.
Right. Maybe you don't throw your hair.
He does that a little too well. Like, I'm better than you.
If they could just be as evolved as I am, right, or as educated around personal development as I am.
Yeah. I don't know if you see this often, but I don't want to make a whole thing of it. We hear this a lot with couples we work with where one person has done therapy or coaching and they almost throw that in their partner's face of like, oh, well, you haven't done any form of therapy, so you wouldn't get it. Or you haven't done this work, so I don't expect you to know that. And by doing that, you're showing contempt in your relationship. And people think that they're doing good in a sense, because like, oh, I work on myself and I know all of this personal development work and I'm enlightened and all of this, but it's like, but you're throwing that in your partner's face. You're making them feel less than.
Yeah. Yeah. Worthless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, I feel like on some level, like this, even if it's a 1%, people can all relate to this, right? When we've had moral high road or moral superiority, not high road, but like superiority, where we're like, we've done this and you haven't, right? And who are you to say anything about anything? And I think it's important to remember that that was the biggest indicator in the Gottman Institute of being able to predict divorce.
Oh.
So again, we can be right or we can be relational.
Yeah.
And it depends on what you want. If you want to be right, that's fine, but you probably won't be able to save your relationship.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, contempt is it's different in the sense that criticism is attacking a person's character. This is where you're actually just taking the aspect that you know more and your partner is worthless. And we want to be careful of that because, and also how motivating would it be when somebody talks to you like that? Like, actually, you know, you might end up just being like, you know what? I don't even really want to do the work with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're acting as though you're so superior and we're partners.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
this doesn't feel good. I mean, how motivating or inspiring is it going to be? Like, at every turn, your partner is saying to you that you're not enough and that you're worthless.
Mm-hmm.
Stonewalling, where you basically just shut down and you start ignoring your partner. That is a definite barrier to growing deeper in love. And the other thing is fighting each other and not getting to the point where you're actually teammates. So you're fighting the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we talked about seeking to understand before being understood.
Mm-hmm.
That takes a lot of self-regulation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other one is just, you know, blaming the other person, not being able to clean up your side of the street.
Yeah.
What part you have in this breakdown in the relationship. And the big one is my partner needs to change. I have couples that come and they tell me all about their partner.
Yeah.
And like how they need to change in order for them to be able to be in this relationship. Well, good luck with that, because nobody gets into a relationship to be changed.
Right. No.
Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing that people have a really hard time accepting, is that you cannot change your partner. You do not have that control. So granted, if they do something that, you know, is against one of your highest values and they're not willing to look at it or, you know, change it or anything, you may have to reevaluate the relationship. Maybe this is not the correct relationship for you, you know, but you cannot force change on that person. That's up to them. That's an inside job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, and that's one of the things I work on with my couples before I bring them together is, are you willing to walk in the session and talk about you? Not about what he or she is doing wrong, but are you able to walk in and share your perspective of what's happening?
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
It's hard. It's hard. It's, you know, it's really forcing. It's like, it's hard, and you'll see where they backtrack when the stakes get higher.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like lifting that 100 pounds in the gym. When the stakes get higher, it's like, okay, we need to work maybe with something a little bit more yellow zone-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Cool.
So what advice would you give to couples who are kind of feel like they're at a standstill in their relationship?
Beautiful. So like, what techniques do I recommend, or?
Sure.
Yeah, just in general, like, let's say you've got a couple that, you know, you're working that comes to see you and they're just kind of at a standstill. They're just not moving forward. They're not doing anything. What kind of advice would you give to them that, you know, would help get them through that, actually moving forward?
To get them like unstuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good. Yeah. The first thing that I would start with to help them to get unstuck is to first recognize the dynamic that's happening and what stage of relationship they're in. So trying to find out, like, where are you? Where are you in what stage of your relationship? Often when they come to me, they're in stage 2, right? The perfect storm. Whether it's been 10 years or 6 months, they're often in that place. So the first thing that I do with them is we start to identify, why are they in this? What is what is their why, their individual why? Why do they keep choosing this partner? Because they don't have to be with this partner. It always amazes me when they're like, I'm with this person and they're doing all this wrong, and like nobody's keeping you there.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so why are you staying? And some people say it's because of the children. Okay, that's one reason. Yeah. But let's start to identify your why of why you're choosing this person and why you're choosing this relationship. And once they get clear on that, it does take a while sometimes, especially the more that the couple has been together in dynamics that have created a lot of chaos and hurt and trauma. It does take a while because a lot of them, they may not feel in love. And I'm like, well, that's okay, right? It's okay that you don't feel in love. So the thing is that we really can't avoid suffering. We can't avoid pain, but we can avoid suffering. So it's really important, if you are stuck, is to find a coach or a therapist that can help you to really start to uncover where you're at in your relationship. What are the dynamics that you have habitually been using to create a lot of hurt feelings and pain and just unhealthy dynamics that aren't working for you? They're coping mechanisms, and we want to respect them as such, but they're not going to help you get where you want to go. So the reason why I say a coach or a therapist is because it's going to help you get quicker in the direction that you want to go. Now, I'm not saying the process is not going to take some time, but it is going to help you versus you trying to figure this out on your own. But we have blind spots and we can't see things that a skilled therapist or coach can actually see as a dynamic that's happening.
You can only get so much benefit out of a book or a YouTube video or whatever else. You need somebody from an outside perspective to really look in and see what's actually going on.
Yeah. It's kind of like going to a doctor, not that we diagnose, but you have something going on. You don't know what it is. You just know it feels pretty bad.
Right.
Yeah. So instead of struggling, that's why you don't have to suffer and struggle through this, that there are people that are trained to help you really navigate this in a way that can actually bring your relationship closer together. Now, they're not responsible for that. You're responsible for the work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I would say the first step when you're at a standstill in your relationship is to really go back to your why, because everything else will be built around your why. Yeah. Then from there, you can start to look at, and I have them do this individually, is look at their sacred relationship agreement, guidelines. Like, how do they want to run their relationship? And then you pick the ones, like say you pick 3, you write 10 on your own, and you pick 3 that you want to stand by that year. And then you can renegotiate it for the following year. But like, for instance, we agree that we will always have each other's back in public and in private. We agree that when an argument comes up, the first thing we'll both do is take a deep breath. So there's things, and again, it's very individual on what they want. Some say, we agree that we put this relationship first before all other relationships. So that's going to set you up, because if you do not have a vision, understanding your why and how you're going to run your relationship, then there's no common base. There's no foundation on which you both have understanding of how you're running your relationship.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, nice.
Well, we do want to be respectful of your time. We would love to do this again. This has been amazing.
I'm happy to do it again. You guys are so much fun.
I know. We always have a blast.
where's the best place that people can find you? And then do you have any offers for our viewers?
Yes. Thank you for the question, Brian. Yeah, so you can go to Relationship Transformation. It's a Facebook group. You can also catch me on Instagram at my name, Danielle Demchak. And I think there's an underscore. I have to follow up on that. I'm sorry about that.
I think
never know if
Instagram should be able to find you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't miss me. There's not too many Danielle Demchaks, if any, for that matter. And then for your audience, I wanted to offer 20% off single sessions and the Love Lab, which is a 5-week program. So if anybody's interested in that, I'd be happy to, meet with you, see if it's right for you. We just have a conversation, no pressure, and get to know each other and see if that's something you want to do.
Nice.
Perfect.
Very good. Yeah, I will. I'll make sure to put the links in the comments when I post the video, just so that to make sure that we're able to get you connected with the people that could really benefit from your help.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you so much. And yeah, and also if they just say, if you want to put the code Be Connected, I use that as the code because that's your business.
Perfect.
Beautiful. Okay.
That way I'll know that they came from you guys.
Cool.
Perfect.
Love it.
Awesome.
Cool.
Any final thoughts?
Oh, no, I'm just so grateful to know you two and all the amazing work that you're doing. I love that you do this as a couple together. It's just, it has to be, again, there is something about doing it as a couple because there's no like taking sides. Sometimes if there's only one individual, they could feel sometimes that a good coach and a good therapist will not take sides, but will also be honest with their couple. Like if you ever feel that, come forward because that's not the intention. But it's nice because there's like one-on-one, like 2-on-2, but I mean like nobody's ever left with just the one person. So I love what you're doing. I know that was like a really crazy way of trying to say
it. I think we got it. Yeah. And that's, partly why we started doing this work together is because it does, it's as any professional, you do your best to not take sides and, we're trained to not take sides and things like that. Not to say that it doesn't happen, because it does. We've heard a lot of horror stories about people that have felt, oh, well, we saw this person and I was ganged up on. And it's like, well, that's not fair. You go to somebody that's a professional to help guide you, onto a better path. And then you feel like you're in a worse spot than where you started. And that's, that can be heartbreaking when somebody's going through that. And that's partly why we started doing this as a couple with the 2-on-2, because it basically takes that out of the equation, makes it like not even a possibility, basically. Right.
Because you guys can balance each other. You can actually like check each other as to like, is that happening?
I'm always amazed, she'll come out with some perspective that like I never would have considered
and vice versa.
Spot on.
And vice versa.
Yeah. So it's and you guys are so much fun. I think fun is an element that has to be little, sparkled over everything because it can be.
It does.
If it's all just work and
nobody wants to do that. And that's what we tell. I mean, we make sure, we obviously we get the job done, but you do have to have fun. I mean, we joke around and you got to incorporate the fun because otherwise like you want something that you're actually going to like look forward to doing. Cause like, if it's, all work, no play, who wants to do that? I know I don't.
And so much of our human behavior is just so ridiculous when you look at it from a bigger perspective. It's funny.
You gotta laugh at it.
So
yes, humor is very transcendent.
Yes, absolutely.
But
cool.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you.
Look forward to talking to you again soon. And
yes, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining
us.
Oh,
you're welcome. Thank you guys. Love what you're doing. Love you. And I will see you hopefully very soon.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Bye.
All right.